In April, that started. Yeah, so there's like something pretty fried and it's kind of okay, so I just wanted to kind of give an overview of what's on Canvas. You know, hopefully again you've had a chance to look at it, but this will give you an opportunity to ask any questions if you have any questions about like how the class is going to be run, or you know, how grading done, all that kind of stuff. And then there's just a short like lab intro. And then, like I said, you'll be able to do the first part of Lab 0 by the time you leave. And then after Thursday's class, you'll be able to do both parts of Lab 0. And then again, Lab 0 is due Monday of next week. I'm pretty sure. If you look at the Canvas, there's a part under module that where you submit your lab work, and it has the due dates there. And I'm pretty sure for the most part, everything is due on Monday. I don't think we have any Monday holidays other than Memorial Day, which is right at the end. By that time, you're working on your final project, so you've done all your labs by that point anyway. Okay. So this is the home page on Canvas. Hopefully you had some time to look at this. How many people have done some sort of design before this class, like either took a design class or you designed something on your own? Okay. You have, yeah, usually at this point, most people you know, in their careers, they haven't, you know, done much design yet. So I expected that, you know, most people, this is going to be your first experience doing any sort of design. And I think what's good to know right up front when you're doing any sort of design is that design is not easy. Design is often time consuming, okay? And there's really no way around it. You know, it's an iterative type of process where, you know, you design something and, you know, you have your initial design and you think it's going to be perfect, and it's not. It just isn't. Okay, you're gonna run into problems, and you know, when you get into fairly complex designs, you know, there's something over here in your design that needs fixing, and you know, you fix that, but fixing that causes this issue over here, and then you come over here and you take care of that, but then this over here that you thought you fixed isn't quite right either, and you got to come back to there. So it's constantly like putting out fires, so to speak. Okay. So, you know, I just wanted to mention that up front because, you know, this class does require time because your designs are not going to work the first time, and you're going to have to find the problem. And a lot of this class is learning how to troubleshoot. And, you know, I'm here along with Blake. Blake, they're in the back. Blake is the instructional student assistant for this class. So he'll be also a resource for help as far as, you know, helping you find what's wrong with your design. Now, not finding the actual problem, but again, guiding you and teaching you best practices as far as troubleshooting. Also, Blake will be the grader for the lab work that you submit. I grade activities, I grade the midterm, I grade the final project, but Blake will be grading the lab work that you turn in, okay, what's due on Monday. Blake is a grad student. In fact, he just became a grad student, right? And when did you take CPE133? Was it a couple of years ago, maybe? It would have been last fall. Oh, last fall, okay. Yeah. And then he's also taken the follow-on class, the CPE233. In fact, he ISA'd for that class for me. So very knowledgeable. So, you know, take advantage of his knowledge, you know, during the course. Okay. Or fall before last, I mean. Okay, so yeah, it's probably been over a year. 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years. That sounds right. Yeah. Yeah, and you're CPE, correct? Yeah. So I took 133, 233, 333. I'll take it in the yeah. So, you know, if you have questions on any of the future classes, he's a good resource too. But we've been through those courses, so he can help you there too. Okay, so anyway, this is a design class, so you know you're going to be spending some time troubleshooting, and you know when you come up for help with troubleshooting, don't be surprised if Blake and I, you know, ask you questions like, "Oh, did you try this? You know, have you done this? That type of thing." Okay, it's really your responsibility to find what the actual problem is. Most problems end up being silly type of things. You know, like in the code that you'll be using to model hardware, you know, syntax errors or naming stuff incorrectly. That's the most common issue that comes up. Okay, and you'll see that with the software, it can be a little frustrating sometimes because you know, it will mark a red squiggly line where there is some sort of problem, but sometimes that problem isn't exactly on that line, it's somewhere near it. Also, the software will generate error messages or warnings, you know, if there's something not quite right. And what can be a little frustrating sometimes is that the actual statement in the message isn't always that helpful, like it's very cryptic. But what is helpful in those messages, the error warnings, is it will often point you to a line in your code where the problem is near. Again, it might not be exactly on that line, but it's something close to that. You know, when I do design using the software that you're going to learn, I make silly mistakes all the time. You know, everybody does. You know, like I'll have, you know, 2 semicolons and they're only supposed to be 1. You know, or you know, I'll have some other type of syntax error. So those are the most common things or silly little things, but occasionally it's more than that. Okay, but again, we'll be teaching you, like I said, the proper ways, you know, the best practices of troubleshooting. Okay, now for the lab portion, there's this Basis 3 board. And like I mentioned in the email and also on Canvas, I think it's a good idea to purchase one of these. You'll be using this board not only in this class, but also in CPE133. I think there's another, is there another class, Blake, that uses this board besides 133 and 333?
Actually, I don't think we can use it on that. Well, you could for your final project, but
Okay.
probably just list it.
Okay, so definitely this class, definitely 233, maybe depending on, you know, maybe the instructor and exactly what he decides to do. In 333, it could be used there also. And like I mentioned in the email, there is an academic price that you can get from Vigilant, who's the manufacturer of this Basis 3 board. I think with the academic discount, it's 120 instead of 160. You also need a cable, USB to, I think it's a micro B. Make sure, no, you can get it from Vigilant. I think it's like an extra $4. But make sure you get the type that passes data as well as power. A common error that people make is they try to use their charging cable from like their Android phone, but charging cables only pass power, they don't pass data. Okay, so those cables won't work with this board. Now, if you don't have the funds or if you just don't want to buy one for whatever reason, we do have these boards in the back. Each bench has one of these. Now, of course, the disadvantage of not having your own is that, you know, those boards in the back, they're first come, first served. So, you know, you may not have it available when you want it to be available. Okay. If you have your own, you don't have to share, right? And you always have the board available whenever you need it. So, of course, that's the advantage of having one. Okay. Now, on the Basis board, oh, here's my marker. On the Basis board, okay, there's an IC. Does anyone know what IC stands for? Integrated circuit. Right? So some of you that we've had circuits, maybe talked a little bit about ICs. Well, on the Basis board, you know, there's these black square or rectangle type components. Those are the ICs. And one of those ICs, I think it's this middle one, is an FPGA. And FPGA stands for Field Programmable Gate Array. And what's inside these, or what's inside this FPGA are blocks of digital logic circuitry. Now, starting next class, we're going to start talking about different types of digital logic circuitry, like gates, logic gates, AND gates and OR gates and NAND gates and things like that. And then throughout the quarter, we'll be talking about, how you can connect these gates up and make useful devices like counters and comparators, other type of devices. So inside this IC, it's all these different digital circuitry, and they're called CLBs. Lots of acronyms here, right? CLB stands for configurable logic block. Okay, so each one of these CLBs is like, some sort of digital logic circuitry. Now, we also have software. Okay, that's Vivado. And hopefully you've had a chance to download Vivado from Xilinx. Xilinx is the producer of Vivado. Vigilant is the manufacturer of the basis for it. How many people have downloaded Vivado? Oh, okay, good. That's been very good. This quarter, I think, in all my sections, has been the biggest percentage of people actually downloading Vivado before this first class. So I commend everybody for doing that. So of the people that have downloaded Vivado, how many people were successful? Like it's on your computer and it seems to be working. Okay. Of the people that have downloaded Vivado and it seems to be working on their computer, how many Macs? Anybody get it working on a Mac? Oh, very good. Do you have a new Mac or an old Mac?
No, I just use the like you go to
Oh, there's like a simulator thing?
yeah, just like you can actively remotely do it like with yourself.
Okay, I know there's some sort of software like that, web-based, but the thing is, and I don't know for sure, I think that's fine for like simulation, but I don't know if you can actually generate what's called a bit stream to get your design on the board. So that's something just to be wary of. But hey, we can talk about that later. All right, but it seems like a lot of people did get their the Vivado on their PC, so that's good. All right, so if you haven't, that's one of the things that's part of this Lab 0 Part 1 is getting Vivado onto your computer. Okay. Now, the language. So this is the software environment. Okay, Vivado, that's the software environment that we're using. And again, it's produced by Xilinx. Then the language that we're going to be using to model the hardware is called System Verilog. Right, so this is the language that models digital hardware. Now, just so you know, there's also just Verilog. It is System Verilog and there's Verilog. And the only difference between the two is System Verilog is a more recent version. Okay, so System Verilog is like Verilog 2.0, right? Where Verilog is just like the original. And most instructors use System Verilog like I do. But there are some instructors, I think Dr. Mealy comes to mind. I think he uses Verilog the most often. So there are some instructors like Dr. Mealy that uses Verilog. But the thing is, no matter which one you learn, if you know one of them, the other one's very similar. System Verilog is just a little bit more user-friendly, at least most people would agree. Okay, so, if you take CPE133 with Dr. Mealy or some other instructor that uses Verilog, knowing System Verilog, you're still going to be fine. Okay. When I teach CPE133, I allow students to use either. Okay, because even though I'm a System Verilog person, I can look at a Verilog program and I can still understand it because again, they're very similar. Okay. Now, the key about System Verilog or Verilog for that matter, is that its purpose, again, is to model digital hardware. See, what Verilog isn't, what System Verilog isn't, it isn't a program that executes instructions. It's not a program that provides instructions to a microprocessor to be executed. So that's the big difference between, a language that models digital hardware and say a high-level language, like your Python or C or any other high-level language. See, these languages are instructions to a microprocessor. Okay, the micro with the P, that's my shorthand for microprocessor. In fact, in CPE133, in that class, you learn a language called assembly language, okay, which is considered a low-level language because its instructions involve like registers and actual hardware components that are part of your microprocessor. Well, assembly also is instructions to a microprocessor. Okay, so this is like conceptually something that you always have to keep in mind. That even though when you write a System Verilog program, it's going to look a lot like a high-level program. In fact, System Verilog is based off of C. So if you know C language, when you write Verilog or System Verilog, it looks a lot like C. Okay, but again, the big difference is your code is not instructions to a microprocessor. The code is modeling digital hardware. So the way that you can think of what you're actually doing when you write a program and then download it to your board is that when you download your System Verilog program down to your basis board, what that code is doing, it's selecting out which digital logic circuitry is needed for whatever you're designing. And it also makes the connections between the digital logic circuitry to do whatever you desire or designed it to do. So, one way to think about it is, and in fact, when I took this class, many years ago, when I was an undergrad and I took a digital lab class like this, we would get a breadboard, right? Those of you that have had a circuits lab, you all know what a breadboard is, right? Well, you would take a breadboard, you would take components like the integrated circuit components, the individual ICs, you'd plug them in the breadboard, and then you would get wire, and you would manually connect those ICs that had the digital logic circuitry inside with wire. Well, that's what the code is doing. The code that you write in System Verilog, it's doing what you would do on a breadboard for you. It's doing it inside this IC, selecting out the components that are needed, right? The digital logic circuitry, and it's also making the connections. Okay? All right. So, let's see, is there anything else? Well, also I put this link here, just, the College of Engineering came out with some specs that are recommended for computers that are used in computer engineering. So just in case you've never seen that, you might want to take a look at it. And then there's information about downloading Vivado. The reason I was asking about the Macs is Vivado does not have a version for Macs. And what I've been told by Cal Poly ITS is that new Macs that have the M1 microprocessor won't run Windows, and therefore you can't use Vivado on the newer Macs. Now, there's something called Parallels, which I don't know a whole lot about, but some students have told me that have Macs that there's this thing called Parallels where they're able to run it, okay, but I've never done it myself. I have a Mac, and I've got Vivado on it. It's an older one. It doesn't have the M1 processor, but I would not be able to get, or I would not have Vivado running on my computer right now if it wasn't for ITS. Okay, it was a real chore to get Vivado to work on my computer. And I had ITS helping me. This is back when EE had its own ITS. Now ITS is centralized for all the different engineering departments. But we tried VirtualBox, we tried what's the other one? There's virtual VMware. And even though it would run, it was really slow and it was really clunky. So what they ended up doing is boot camping my Mac, and you know, I just run Vivado on the Windows side and it works fine, but it took a while to get it to work. I mean, even on the boot camping, there was settings that had to be changed and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I just mentioned that because even though it's not impossible to get Vivado to work on Mac, because people have done it, okay, it's usually not easy. It usually requires more work than getting it to work on a PC. So I mention all that because if you do have the option, like sometimes people will have like a Mac laptop, but their PC will be, or their desktop will be PC, or maybe they have a friend or a relative that has a PC. You know, if you're in a situation like that where you actually have an option, go with the PC because your life is probably going to be easier. Now, we have computers in the back that have Vivado on them. So again, you can use our computers, but you know, the disadvantage is first come, first serve. That might not be available when you need it. And also you have to be here, right? You couldn't be somewhere else if you wanted to work at home or something like that. You know, some common problems with installing the software. The number one problem is not having enough memory. Okay, not having enough free memory when you go to install. Vivado requires a lot of memory when you're installing. It's like 100 gig. I had a student in my 12 to 3 class actually with a Mac, and everything was going well with his downloading and installing. But then on the final stage of the installing, it got stuck. And it was at the same point for like an hour. And you know, he came up to me and he explained the problem. And I said, well, how much memory you got? He's like, oh, well, yeah, I just put SolidWorks and something else. And so I'm pretty sure that that's the issue, that he doesn't have enough free memory. So that's why it got stuck. So, you know, that's probably the most common thing. Another common item that causes problems with Vivado. Vivado does not like spaces anywhere in the path name. So like when you're naming folders or files, never put a space. Okay, I would avoid all special characters to tell you the truth. And now I do know underscore works. It's like when I name my folders and my files, I instead of using a space, you know, I put an underscore. And Vivado seems to be fine with underscores. Okay, but other special characters, you're on your own, right? Because I don't know. And then I've been told by students that, especially with Macs, that sometimes the antivirus software causes problems with the install. Like they temporarily have to shut off their antivirus software to get it to install. So, you know, those are some of the common things I've heard. Now, I am not an ITS person. Okay, so, you know, there's some problems with loading and installing that I may be able to help you with because I've heard from other students about it. But for the most part, the best thing to do if you're having problems with installing, especially if it's a Mac, is get ITS help. I learned last quarter, a student told me that over in the library, where I guess they have the 24-hour place, that there's ITS help over there. And from what I've heard, they're really good. So, you know, that's a resource that you could use if you run into problems. Okay. All right. So I don't think there's anything on this page left to talk about unless you have questions. Again, if you have questions, just go ahead and ask. Okay, don't be shy about asking questions. But let's look at the syllabus. Okay, just get some highlights here. First thing, and I think I mentioned this in the email, this class format is what's called blended. That means there's a portion of the class that's in person and there's a portion of the class that's online. So as you can see, the first 3/4 of the class is in person. So when it's in person, you know, during our class time, for the most part, what the agenda is going to be is, you know, the first hour is a lecture. Now, sometimes it's a little bit more than an hour, sometimes a little less than an hour, but we start with the lecture. Then after the lecture, there'll be some sort of class activity. Okay, so you get to practice what I just talked about. And then the last hour after the class activity, that's the lab time. Okay, and the only homework this quarter is any lab work you don't finish during class time. Also, once the class activity is finished, I don't require that you stay here to work on the lab. Okay, if you want to go somewhere else, if you want to go back to your dorm or apartment, or you want to go somewhere on campus, whatever, cafe, whatever it is, that's fine. Now, the disadvantage of leaving the room is I'm not available to help you and Blake isn't available. Okay, but sometimes, especially after the first couple of weeks, some people get pretty confident, with Verilog, they feel pretty good about it. And they feel pretty good about, the Vivado, they're learning the process that we show you in the intro video. So yeah, some people are fine with, just going somewhere and working on it outside of class, and that's good, or that's fine. Okay. Now, the last quarter, so the Thursday of the 8th week, that's an open lab. Okay, and what I mean by open lab is that's just an optional lab where if you've got something you need to catch up on, or you want to get ahead on the final projects that start, or the last 2 weeks, well, that's what that lab is about. And then the last 2 weeks, the 9th week and the 10th week, there's no new material. Okay, so there's not going to be any lecture or class activities or anything like that. The last 2 weeks are devoted for you to work on the final project. And the final project has 2 parts. There's an individual part and there's a team part to it. Okay, the individual part is week 9. The team part is week 10. And the reason why I say online is just that I'm available those 2 weeks on Zoom if you need guidance with your final project. You're not required to come to class those last 2 weeks. I mean, this class will be open. This room will be open. So if you need to come in here to use a basis board or use the computers, you can do that. It's just there's no required class time. Again, that time is devoted for you to do the final project. Okay? So there's no like Zoom lectures or anything like that during the last 2 weeks. Okay? Okay, and then during the quarter, I have my office hours on Wednesdays. Okay, those 5 hours from 10 to 3. I prefer that you make an appointment with me beforehand if you can. Because, I don't sit at my computer for those 5 hours just waiting for somebody to come on the computer, okay? If I get an email, I'll jump on the computer and, I'll meet with you. And if I know ahead of time, I can make sure I'm there at that exact time. If you email me at 12 o'clock on Wednesday, it may take me 10 or 15 minutes to get to my computer, depending on what I'm doing. But, I'll still meet with you. Might just be a little later than the time that you sent me. Okay, and here's the link to those the Zoom office hours. Okay, and then let's see what else we have in the syllabus. Okay, there's a reference text. Okay, there's no assignments out of the text. Again, it's just a reference. Okay, talked about the classroom protocol. Okay, graded work. Okay, we talked about activities already. We talked about if you're absent, it won't count as long as you show that it was a university recognized reason along with documentation. I don't know, do they have the COVID passes anymore? Did they get rid of that? You don't do like the green red anymore, right? They don't do it. Okay, there's 7 labs. Okay, lab 0 through lab 6. The due dates, I'm pretty sure they're all on Monday. Again, you can check on Canvas to see when each lab is due. Late labs are accepted, but you lose 10% each day it's late, up to 5 days late. Okay, so if you don't pass it in within 5 days of the original due date, then it's scored as 0. Here's the grading criteria for the lab work. So we already talked about the in-class activity. Okay, lab work. Okay, so the in-class activity, each table is a group. With lab work, it's going to be 2-person groups. And we'll determine the groups next class, okay, on Thursday. I pretty much allow students to partner up with whoever they want. Okay, so if there's somebody in the class that you work well with, maybe you were in the class with that person, in a previous lab, and you work well together. And if you want to be partners, just let me know on Thursday. Okay, if you don't, let me know who you want to work with. I just randomly assign people. Typically, I'll try to pair up a CPE major with an EE major just to get some variety there. Okay, okay, but it's 2-person groups. Each person does their own design and their own work. Okay, but it's one submission per group. And I'll get to what you need to submit in just a second. Okay, so each person's gonna be doing their own thing on their own computer or, one of our computers. And then the group determines what to turn in. Sometimes it's just, they look at each other's work and they say, okay, this one looks better, let's turn that one in. Or sometimes groups will just alternate every week. They'll say, okay, this week I'll turn mine in, next week I'll turn yours in, and so on. Now, one thing I'm really gonna clamp down on is making sure that everyone's doing their own work, okay? So this quarter, I want team members to either be sitting across from each other or in different parts of the room. I don't want team members sitting side by side. Okay, and the reason is, and I would tell students prior to this quarter, no looking over the shoulder, right? You can't have like one person doing all the computer work and like somebody just looking over their shoulder. Okay, there's none of that because you don't learn by looking over somebody's shoulder. In fact, it's bad for your back, okay, especially when you get older, right? Neck muscles get all tense. So it's not good health-wise, it's not good educational-wise either, right? Because you're not going to learn by looking over someone's shoulder, right? Whole thing about Cal Poly is learn by doing, right? Okay, well, the reason why this quarter I'm saying no side by side is because I can't remember if this happened last quarter, fall quarter, but in a recent quarter, I had a student come up to me that was having some difficulty, and the problem he was having was really strange. It was something I hadn't seen before. It was that weird, So after looking at it and talking with them, I said, well, why don't you go look at your lab partner and see what's going on with his design. Oh, he's getting the same thing. And when he said that, I go, that's weird. What's the chances of that, right? Somebody doing their own stuff and they both have the same weird problem that I haven't seen before. Well, the reason it was the same problem was they were just doing the same thing. They were sitting side by side and they're typing in the same thing, which is equivalent to looking over somebody's shoulder, right? That's not doing your own work if you're just copying what the person next to you is doing, right? So that's why there's no longer side by side. You have to be across from each other, or what some people do is, one person will be sitting at this table, the other person will go to another table or somewhere else in the room, work on their stuff, but then they'll collaborate. If they run into an issue, they'll come over, they'll say, hey, I'm having this problem. Oh, you did. Oh, I see. I had this in the wrong place, or whatever it may be. Okay. The reason I want people doing their own thing is because that's how you learn from each other. Right? Because if one person runs into an issue, they can go and compare to what the other person's doing and see maybe where their error is. Okay? All right, so hopefully we won't run into that situation number 7, that weird situation. I think it was last quarter. Okay, let's see. Anything? Oh, now when you submit your lab work, this is what you submit and this is what you're graded on. Okay, you want a video demo that shows that your design works 100% on your basis board. And it's got to be 100% to get credit. Okay, it's a no credit. There's no partial credit with this. It's either 100% working and you get full credit, or it's not 100%. Even if it's 99%, that's not 100%, and there's no credit. Okay. And I know that sounds harsh, and I know it is harsh. Okay, but it's harsh for a reason. And the reason is this is what you're going to design in CPE133. This is the microprocessor that you design in that class. And in order for this microprocessor to work, all these individual circuits, okay, each one of these blocks is an individual circuit. And in that class, you build a block essentially every week. Well, if this block is working 99% and this block is working 92% and this block is working 80%, it's not going to work when you put it all together. In order for this microprocessor to work, everything's got to be working 100%. Okay, so that's the reason why in this class, you only get credit for this video demo if your design's working 100%. It can't be anything less than that. And I'll explain to you what we mean by 100%. In fact, this lab 0, there's going to be a truth table, and we're going to talk about what a truth table is on Thursday. But there's this truth table that has 8 different inputs. And if it's working 100% for those 8 different inputs, you're going to get the expected output. Okay, so as long as on your board you can show that your board is giving you that same truth table, then it's 100%. Okay, but if just one of those rows, just one out of the 8 isn't correct, then it's not 100% and it's not working. Okay. Okay, and then there's 3 other items. And as we go through the quarter, and by the end of this week or by the beginning of next week, you'll know what all these things are. Most of this you see in my intro to Vivado video. There's a simulation, errors and warnings, and also a schematic. So when you submit your lab work, we want you to submit one PDF. And in that one PDF, for the video, have a link to the video, and either put the video on YouTube or Google Drive or wherever else you want to put it. Okay, but inside that PDF, you put the link to the video. Okay, then you'll also have a screenshot of the sim. Okay, you want a screenshot of your error in warnings. Now, hopefully, the ideal is that you don't get any errors and you don't get any warnings. So if that's the case, still take a screenshot and you'll see, eventually you'll see like where in Vivado those messages are. Okay, they're in a window like towards the bottom of the screen. Well, if you're not getting any warnings or errors, actually take a screenshot of that window that shows you're not getting any errors and warnings. Don't write or type, well, I didn't get any errors and warnings. You have to show that you didn't get it. Okay? And then also a screenshot of the schematic. Okay, this thing called an elaborated design schematic, which, again, you'll start to see what all this is as you, go through the first lab 0. You look at the intro videos about it. Okay, but that's what you want to be turning in. And again, it's one of these per group. All right, so when you turn it in, maybe the PDF put both people's names so the grader knows, who's in the group. Okay, let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, also very important, if someone misses more than one lab, like they don't turn in, or they don't turn in time, like they're more than 5 days late for more than one lab, I will not issue a passing grade for this class. Okay, the lab portion of this class is very important, right? In my opinion, if you miss more than one lab, it's very likely you're not going to do well in CPE133. Okay, because that microprocessor that you build in 233, it's an order of magnitude more difficult than the most difficult assignment in this class. So if you're having trouble with the lab in this class, you're definitely going to have trouble in 233, right? Because it's like this class on steroids. Let's see, what else do I have here? I think I talked about, we talked about, oh, there's a midterm. There is no written final. Okay, there is a midterm, but there's no final during finals week. Okay, the reason I'm not having a final during finals week is because you've got a final project. In fact, again, there's 2 parts to it, the 2 weeks before the final. Okay, so there's no final exam, just the midterm, and the midterm is going to be on the 11th of May. I don't expect to change that. That's pretty rock solid. It's the first 60 minutes of the class, and then there's a lecture after that. Let's see, what else do we have? Yeah, final project, like I said, there's an individual part of the final project and there's a team part. The reason I have part of the final project being individual is I'm trying to discourage someone from just trying to skate through the labs this quarter, right? It should be that each person in the group is doing their own thing and they're both pulling their weight. Okay, sometimes it doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes I get somebody who's just trying to skate through the lab part. But if you do that, the chances are on the final project individual, you're gonna bomb it. Okay, you gotta go through the process of doing the labs to be prepared to do the lab or the final project individually. Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, grading. 15% of the class activity along with attendance. Again, you have to be here in order to get credit for the class activity, so that's how it works into the attendance. Also, yeah, and this doesn't happen a lot, but occasionally I'll have somebody who's always late. And if you're late once or twice during the quarter, I don't consider that any big deal. But if you're late just about all the time, then I start to get concerned and it starts to affect your attendance. Lab work is 35%. There's 7 labs, so each lab is 5% of the total. Midterm 25%, final projects 25%, where each part is 12.5%. And I use the normal, plus minuses for grading. And then I just have, if you're registered with the DRC, just let me know as soon as possible. And then I just have, university policy with academic honesty and also accessibility and diversity. So if you have any questions about any of this, just let me know. And, okay, so the last thing here is let's look at lab 0 part 1. So you go to modules. There's a bunch of stuff here. Make sure you check out what's on your modules. There's a bunch of resources, see the information on the basic core, filings, Bravado resources. There are a lot of stuff. Okay, here's the meetings. This is where I'll put the recordings. Okay, I'll post them up on this part. I'll put today under the team #1. Then you got lab instructions. So here's my intro to the Bravado video. Also a link on here. Here's the lab demo criteria that is in the syllabus. Here's different test cases for the labs coming up through the quarter. So this will be handy later on. And then for each lab, there's instructions and there's intro videos. We have diagrams. Okay, and then there's lab resources for troubleshooting things. There's a video that Dr. Benson put together on troubleshooting. It's really good. This is where you submit your lab assignments. And then there's stuff about the final project that we'll talk about more as we get closer to that. So right now, let's go to Meeting1. And right here is lab 0 part 1. Okay, so this is what you need to do before next class. Most of it is the same as what was in the syllabus or the email that I sent you. If you haven't already done so, download Bravado to your computer. And then once you have Bravado on your computer, watch this intro to Bravado video. Okay, it steps you through like getting used to that software environment. Okay, it shows you how to create files, add files to your project. You synthesize, it shows like a synthesis. You're gonna do the same example that I have in that video for lab 0. Okay, so it like steps you through all the different processes of Bravado. Okay, all the way from checking your syntax of your code, all the way through generating a bit file that gets downloaded to your basis board to see if your design works on the board. Okay, so did you have any questions about anything? Does everybody have a good idea of what the course is all about and how you're going to be evaluated and what you got to turn in? 2-person groups, 1 submission per group. 4-person activities, 1 submission per table. Does it all seem good? Okay, well, we're done, or I'm done. So, you're free to do whatever you want at this point. If you want to take off, that's fine. If you want to stay here and start working on lab 0, that's fine. It's your choice. Okay, but I will see you on Thursday. Question? Okay. Yeah.
So for the labs, to get 100%, there's gonna be a criteria, like there are certain inputs that we put in.
Yeah.
That's expected that we don't.
Correct.
Yeah, that's to be it, there might not be like any more, like supply over here, put this in, to see if it works or not.
No, for each of the labs, for most of the labs, we're gonna talk about. And as long as you show on your paper. Most common reason people lose out on that is when they're doing that video, they're not careful and they don't take care of them every step. Like it's good.
Regardless of the words, they just don't show it on the video.
Right, it could be a case where it worked, but because they hit something on the video, the person's brain doesn't know. Right, they don't know.
You already have the models for this one?
Huh?
No.
So a lot of this is just being careful. You know, that's why it's good having two people. You have a person there. They come on this.
I mean, I had a need for that. Like the way that he taught was the way that I did. I think the topics that we should put in the work and talk, like understand each topic as they're taught, then you'll be. But
Yeah, I guess it's pretty good. I'm trying to get people.
no, I'm here.
Make sure it's right the first time. Right, it's not that we're seeing.
So then, I took a test. Yeah.
You gotta have, put that off.
I took it with the meeting. Yeah.
How could you like the hardest?
Yeah.
You think something right now? No, four.
Well,
Are you top four?
what we're doing this time.
Would you have, after we done it?
Yeah. Yeah, you'll see, I mean, yeah, it's not evident at this point, that we're just starting, but you'll see by next week, definitely. I mean, next class is just kind of like what dates are, but then when you start putting the dates together, with the circuitry, that's kind of being. Okay. Let me know on Thursday, right at the beginning of the class. Okay. Yeah.
Have you taught to 135?
Yes, I thought that many times.
How is it like? I'm considering like their kids more, because like I'm like a really hectic schedule, like
Okay.
so I was wondering like how is the workload if it's compared to that class?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. And I mean, like most really good questions, the answer is depends. No, I'm not trying to be snide or anything. It just depends, like, what the person feels most comfortable with. Like, some people find circuits not that bad. Other people find it really a challenge. Same thing with this class. Some people find digital not that bad, like pretty easy, but then other people have a hard time. Now, I think the people that have a hard time, it's mostly to do with the lab and the software. Because, you know, like any programming, it could be time consuming.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so right now you're registered for both.
Yeah, I'm like.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend, yeah, that's a lot of work. And whether it's 113 or 133, I think it would be wise to maybe drop one of those. I mean, you might want to talk to your advisor to make sure, but you know,
That's pretty you top like this class.
right. Yeah, but like I said, it's really dependent on the person. Because you know, I've had people in 113 and they think it's a cakewalk, you know, then I've had other people that really struggle with it. And same thing for this class. It depends a lot on the person. Have you had any circuits prior?
No, I did with
No programming or anything?
no, I did a little bit of coding, like I know like a little bit of Python, Java, but that too.
Okay. Yeah, this, like I said, this programming is a little bit different. Like I said, it models hardware, so you know, it's gonna look a lot like any high level, but it's not doing the same thing. But yeah, I'm sorry I can't give you a more definite answer, but yeah, the honest answer is it just depends. Yeah. No, you could get away with like two people using the same board.
Yeah, there aren't people looking at anything else.
Yeah, and also I do allow, when we get to the final project, I do allow like people from different sections to pair up. So like if for the, now I don't allow that for the labs during the quarter, right? It's gonna be somebody in this section, but when we get to the final project, like there's somebody in a different section of mine. He's in my section. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you could be partners for the final project.
So we can just one student out for the.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll work. Mhm.
Would it be possible for me to on the canvas so I can look over the lab materials and hopefully straight on?
Let's see. For lab, we're talking about lab 0.1. Actually, we wouldn't have to do that because you only need this video, really.
Okay,
And that video is on YouTube.
okay,
So if you go to YouTube and you just put intro to the bottom, my name, it should come up. If it doesn't, let me know, but it should.
got it, thank you.
Okay.
That's all we need, because I was gonna ask the same thing. So
Yeah.
we just need to watch the video. We don't need
Right, after you download Vivado, watch that video because it steps you
Yeah.
through like the environment.
alright.
Yeah.
Alright then. Oh yeah, thank you.
For the lab, the person you guys signed, are we stuck with them the whole quarter, or does it switch every week?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah, I forgot to talk about that. What I did last quarter that seemed to work well, and I did this for the first time, is that after like, let's see, after the ad drop, which is next week, so let's see, there'd be lab 0 this week, and then we'd start lab 1 next week. So probably after lab 0 and 1, I would pass out a handout where each student would just have to check off they want to stay with the same person or they want to change.
Oh, okay.
And they don't have to give a reason. Like sometimes people just want to change because they want to meet other people in the class. So yeah, I can do that. Does that sound good? Were you hoping to stay with the same or hoping to change or?
I don't know. Yet.
Okay.
Like,
But yeah, but at least this way it gives you that option. Like if you're originally with somebody that you work well with, you can stay with that person, or if you want to change, you can change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
And then also what I think we mentioned it before, but what do we need to have done before
Next class. Yeah, before next class, download the
Yeah,
Vivado.
we did that.
Okay, you did that?
Yeah, it was a change instead of up on our Mac.
Oh, right, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing you would want to do is watch this video and just follow along with your Vivado. It just kind of steps you through an example. And then you'll be able to do most of what's in that video, except you won't be able to download to the board.
Yeah,
Well,
my.
you'll be able to do it here, but not on your own if you haven't received it yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, if you don't get it, that's something you do in class, if we have them in class.
So you just watch the video.
Yeah, well, watch it and you can step, like,
Yeah.
as you're watching it, you can do it on your computer to learn how to do the steps.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Are you on? Oh, yeah, you're, yeah, you're in. Yeah, this is the way, the circles are the people that live here. Oh.
It's like not. Or it's like not.
Yeah, I think these were last. What's your friend's name? Is it Omar?
Yeah, okay.
Because he was here today, he was sitting at this table. The sound.
Oh, no, I was looking in the back, that's why.
Oh, okay, but is that the person you're looking for?
Yeah, okay.
Cause yeah, he's first on the list and there was somebody that wasn't here, this person wasn't here, and then there was somebody, I think she was telling me that, that's her roomie. Oh, no, no. So yeah, if she drops, and if Omar, I don't know, if you know if Omar is in another section, I'm not sure. I don't, is that because
I don't know why you're come here. The section.
Oh,
no, section.
well, some people, what they'll do,
I'm sure how that would work, but if I wanted to set for this section, I can, that also be possible. So I don't know how that works.
you wanna go to one of my earlier sessions?
Yes, maybe the 8 so that, because I'm fine with later on classes, but I don't think I'm not sure that would be possible, but in this case.
All right, it's possible, talk to me, see, I don't get permission, so why?
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, if you're interested, if you're still interested, like at the end of the week, send me an email to remind me. And I'll look, because, I mean, there's a certain number that I definitely don't wanna go over, but usually 8 to 11, usually there's not like a lot of people that work that is, it's important.
Yeah, I haven't, yeah, I understand it's wrong, but
Okay,
yeah.
all right, so yeah, I mean, it is possible, I can't tell you definitely.
Yeah, no, it's completely fine. If I can, then I can always stay there.
Okay, yeah, just like I said, just send me like an email like on Friday, and then I can give you more depth on that. Okay, so,
Have a good day.
alrighty. Another first day. Yeah. So, how's your first couple of days going? Have you had a lot of classes yet, or?
One day I only had one class scheduled, but with clubs, I'm gonna end up being on campus all day. Which is gonna be a whole day. It's okay, I don't have any class on Friday, so you will not hear complain out of me about scheduling this quarter.
So what classes are you taking this quarter?
I'm taking computer networks,
Oh, okay.
computer systems, senior projects, and
Okay. So who are your instructors?
Dr. Janowitz,
Oh.
Dr. Smith,
Oh,
and Dr. Beard.
What's Danovitz teaching?
He's teaching computer systems. It's supposed to be like, from what I understand, it's like a graduate architecture class. So we're talking about like the order from 233, like what kind of optimizations would they actually do in industry on the CPU like that.
Oh, okay.
So there's like a bunch of different things, I guess.
Oh. Now, is that class on Tuesday too? You know, is that the one?
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, okay. So you're right over in 133.
yeah. Yeah, I saw on the board, it said Gary Perks
Yeah.
class. It's at 2100.
Yeah, because we switched rooms like 2 weeks ago, but and this always happens when you switch rooms like close to the beginning of the quarter. The students will take a screenshot of their schedule like 3 months ago.
If the rooms changed. Yeah, we definitely had like 3 suits walk out in the middle of class.
Well-
just in case you don't know.
Yeah, because all my classes are like that. 8 to 11, 12, 6, so 8 to 11, get to be 8 o'clock and really like half the classes. Yeah, and then I started. Sure enough, I go walking down that way and there's like 5 groups there. And then when I get to the room, maybe it's still like setting up. I go to the, it's when we made an announcement, and right away, I can go see it out. Then I came back and I told people here the situation, and there was a couple of his students that,
We're in
mine.
here that.
But then, I started the lecture and then somebody came in like 20 or 30 minutes late, right? And, they sat down. I do the rest of the lecture, they do the activity. So then, once the activity's done, this is around 10 o'clock, right? It's like 2 hours later, the student comes up and goes, I think I'm in the wrong club.
Oh,
And it was one of his students. Didn't realize it till like 2 hours.
If you're a second year, you're in 521, that's understandable. If you're a graduate student and you're in 133, that's unacceptable.
Yeah.